I'm Shana O'Brien.
And I'm Andi Costello.
And we are your homegirls of Vancouver, Washington, USA, here with our podcast for you today.
Thank you so much for tuning in, watching, or listening. We're glad to have you here this week. What are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to follow up on one of our previous topics. We talked about what to look for if you were purchasing a piece of land to build on. So I thought today we could talk about things that are different when you're trying to sell a piece of land. A lot of people sometimes will inherit land or come across some great opportunity to purchase extra parcels when they build, and then they end up with this extra land that they're not going to use and they want to sell it. And it's a little bit different than selling your house.
That's very true. Very true. There's lots of things to be thinking about when you are looking to sell a lot. And the first tip that we have for you is to make sure you've got a good agent. We're both really awesome women.
We are.
And either starting with us or starting with somebody that you know and trust, but making sure that somebody understands the nuances of selling a lot, which, like Shana mentioned, is very different than selling a home.
It's different, and one of the most crucial ways it's different is the way that you price it. So if you own a lot in a subdivision that you can do comps on because there were 100 lots and now there are 80 houses, those lots got sold, houses got built, we can do comps on those lots and tell you what the going rate is. You can get a really good estimate of the market value. But if it's a piece of land that's unique, especially if it's multiple acres or out in a very rural area, it's a lot less likely that we're going to be able to find a piece of property that matches it exactly to say, oh, well, if they sold 5 acres on that road, then 5 acres on this road should be the same price. So you definitely want to start out with finding a good agent who can do the pricing for you. And you want to make sure that you market it properly. You've got a different audience. The people that are buying homes are going in looking at things like the floor plan and granite countertops, whereas people that want to buy a piece of land are more interested in the location and the opportunity. Is this a good deal for me to find a piece of land to build my dream home?
And as part of that marketing, one of the things that's really important is to make sure that, like anything when you're selling, is that you have great photos. Those drone shots, the aerial shots, if it's a large tract, maybe showing an aerial of where maybe the lot lines might be, so that people can kind of picture what that land might look like, maybe how buildable it is, even before they drive out there as a buyer, because sometimes these lots might be in rural areas that might be a little bit more difficult to get to. So if they don't want to spend their time, they want to kind of see from the photos, does it look like it's something that we could build on, how difficult that might be.
And so you want to be really good, just like selling a house, you want, as an agent, both of us would always use a professional photographer to do listing photos. So you want to make sure that the lot is making a good impression on the MLS. You want to have it mowed, have it clean, get rid of any trash or debris that's on the property, and get those good photos, get some drone photography, maybe have a survey done in advance so that you have very clear boundaries that you, because that's the first thing somebody's going to ask about. It's not a legal requirement in Washington or Oregon to have property surveyed as part of a real estate transaction. But if you have any kind of a big parcel of land where there's any question about boundaries, you're going to need to invest in a survey before you sell it.
And you might also want to consider having a perk test to make sure that somebody could drill a well if there's not a well there already. And also making sure that you have correct information about whether there's a septic system, because if somebody's going to want to build, they're going to want to know, can they drill a well, get water, can they put in a septic system, assuming that it's not in an urban area where they'd have access to a sewer system.
Right.
And then also making sure that you understand where the utilities are. How far is somebody that's going to build there having to bring electric down the driveway? How far are they going to have to go? Those are questions that people, buyers are going to want to know, because that all adds up to the cost of building on the lot.
And just being really clear in the description of the property. If it's a 6-acre property with a 1/4 acre buildable home site, be really clear on that. I've driven out to the middle of nowhere with clients to look at acreage, and then you get there and the acre, it's 6 acres like this, with, you know, a 1/4 acre maybe cleared, and maybe not even enough room to put a drain field in to even put in septic. So you have to do, that is all buyer due diligence. As the buyer, you are the one that needs to do that. So as the seller, providing that information up front is going to make your listing that much more attractive to somebody. And it depends on who your audience is. It depends on what kind of land it is. Is your target audience a family that wants to build a home? Or is it a huge parcel that you think a builder might want to start building some spec homes on? Or is it the kind of thing that a developer can purchase to put in a whole neighborhood? So knowing who you're targeting this to will definitely help in your marketing and how you put it out there.
And one thing to keep in mind as the seller of the lot is that most likely your sales are going to be a little bit slower as you market that property. Now, maybe, as Shana mentioned, if it's a lot or 10 lots within a subdivision that's actively being constructed in, you might have a little bit more movement. But if you're looking at selling that 6 acres, those 30 acres in more rural parts of our community, that's not a buyer. You're not going to find a buyer everywhere, because the buyer is going to have different financing. It's obviously going to have trouble, if they don't have the cash, might have to look at some different options. So things might just sit on the market a little bit longer than if you were selling an already built home on that acreage.
Yeah, land sales are definitely slower. It's not as active as a market. There's not as many buyers. So you have got to go into it with patience. It's not, we're kind of, not just talking about land, but just the market in general as we're going into the fall. Things are getting a little slower. We have home sellers that are panicking because they don't get an offer the first week. And with land, you're looking at months that the land's going to be on the market before you probably find a buyer. And a good way to draw a buyer in, my last tip, was if you can possibly offer any kind of owner financing, if you can carry the contract. One of the things that holds people back a lot of times from buying a piece of land because they want to put a nice manufactured home on it or they want to build on it, it's hard to get the financing for those. It requires a really large down payment, or bundling it with a builder who's going to do put it all in one mortgage. So if you have a piece of land that you can do like an owner carry for part of the price of the land, that would definitely probably help move it faster.
That's a really good tip. Thanks for sharing that. Next up in our podcast, we every week provide a home maintenance tip. And if you want a copy of our free guide, digital copy, you can text the word free to 77948. We'll be happy to send that over your way. And our tip this week is to flush your hot water heater as we start getting into cooler weather. You might not want to be outside as much and monkeying around with, being in the water and getting wet and dirty. So want to make sure that you're flushing your hot water heater. Hot water heaters always have a hose bib that you can connect your hose and run it out your driveway or onto your lawn to drain that, flush out all the crud that might be in your hot water heater, and then have it filled back up so that you've got a nice fresh hot water heater as we get into the winter season.
Good idea. Yeah, I don't want to do that when it's nasty outside. No. I'd rather just do it on a normal nice day. Right.
And especially as it gets colder, you don't want it like icing up your driveway where you can slip and fall.
So that's your home maintenance tip. And again, if you'd like to receive the whole calendar of home maintenance tips, just text the word free to the number 77948 and you'll get a link to download that in a PDF.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like our podcast, please feel free to share it or comment on it. We are on all the major platforms, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening, we are there. We'd appreciate any questions, comments, feedback, likes, shares.
Yeah, and if you need to get in touch with either Andi or I with any of your real estate questions, contact information for both of us is available on our website, which is homegirlspodcast.com.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and we will see you next week.
Thanks.
Take care.